Michelangalone. Error code 400. Chapter 9. Plans take time. Notes. We're back, baby. Okay, sorry this took long, stuff happened IRL, so had to take care of that, but whatever, we're okay now, and here y'all go. Chapter text. The air felt sickeningly colder in the cavern as Michelangelo and Draxum descended the staircase. It had only been less than 24 hours since Michael learned about the Foot Clan. At the bottom of the stairs, the two purple men waited at the bottom of the staircase for them. They had this grin that seemed friendly. "Welcome back, Baron Draxum," the raspy-voiced man said, as Draxum approached him. "We're glad to have your expertise," he continued. "Of course, it's my pleasure, Lieutenant," Draxum said as he shook the lieutenant's hand. "Wonderful, please follow us, and we will discuss our plans," the lieutenant said, now leading them away to a room on the other side. Just before Michael could enter the room, Brute stopped him. The Brute had placed his hand in front of him, stopping him in his path. Michael looks at him, giving him a glare under the mask. Draxum turns to see the scene. "What's the problem?" Draxum asked, now facing the lieutenant. "We would prefer to discuss this matter in private," the lieutenant replied. "A kid scram," the Brute said with a smirk. Michael gritted his teeth at being called a child. He peers inside the room to look at Draxum, waiting for him to say something. "You heard them for. Run along," Draxum said as he continued to walk with the lieutenant into the room. Michael stood there a bit stunned that Draxum had bluntly discarded him. The Brute stared at him with a smirk as he closed the door on him. Michael stood there for a moment, his fist clenched tight. Something's wrong, he thought to himself. Nothing about this place seems right. He took a breath and his eyes eventually started to wander around. "If there's nothing I can do to convince my father that these people have malicious plans, then I'll have to find evidence of what they're really up to." He starts to walk off from the door, only turning around to see if anyone would come out. Less than a minute has passed since he started his exploration. The Foot's underground bunker wasn't as huge as he initially thought it was. There were only 6 rooms that were attached to the main one. It was a really basic necessity. One room for the kitchen, another full of portals to get around the city undetected, a training room, and where he just came from, which was the meeting room. There were 2 rooms that were locked, which now remains a mystery to Michael. He had run into a few Foot soldiers, but either they didn't care or knew about Michael being there. After exploring the place, he eventually stood in front of a giant armor stand. There were pieces of armor strapped to it. So this must be the armor Dad was talking about, he thought. He could practically feel the evil pour out of it. The armor had an incredibly powerful dark aura that made him feel uneasy. "What the heck is this thing?" Michael thought, allowing his curiosity to take over, making him reach out to the armor. Suddenly his hand was slapped harshly away from the armor. "You're not allowed to touch that," the person said. Michael turns to see that it was the same recruit from yesterday. She had a stern look on her face. "You again," he said, staring at her as he shook off any stinging pain from his hand. "This armor belongs to the master," the girl said with her chin up, finger pointing up. "You shouldn't be here," she continued as she pushed him away from the armor. Michael just rolled his eyes as he complied. Michael figured he would walk away, and that would be the end of it. That was until he noticed her following him as he explored the area. Eventually, he took notice of how the meeting was finally done. He rushed over to Draxum's side. "For Draxum said as he approached Michael. "Yes, Lord Draxum, come, I have something for you," Draxum said as he prompted Ford to follow. Behind him, he can see the girl from before talking to Lieutenant. He follows Draxum to the training area he ran into before. "Here," Draxum said, tossing Michael a small pin. He narrowly caught it. He looks at the pin, noticing how it looked identical to his shell. "What is it?" he asked, holding the pin in his hand, flipping and turning it around. "It's a disguise," Draxum said. "Put it on," Draxum said with a smile. Michael pinned it to his shirt. Once it was on, he felt magic swirl around him. Then he felt lighter, like something had been lifted off him. No, something had happened. He touches his face only to find something smooth and squishy rather than his usual scaly skin. In response, he ran over to a mirror, looking at himself. In the mirror appeared a stranger he had never seen before, but the person in the mirror was him. He was still wearing his clothes, so he took off his mask. There he saw an unfamiliar face, himself. In the mirror, he appeared human. He had milk chocolate skin. His pupils stayed their red-orange colors, but a bit smaller. His orange spots traded with freckles. His hair was curly, probably type 4A. "Am human?" Michelle said as he inspected his new body. "Yes. Your next mission requires that you blend in with those humans," Draxum said as he looked at Michael through the mirror. "This will make it easier for you to fetch the armor pieces," Draxum said, grinning. "Omar?" Michael questioned. "Yes, your partner will explain this to you," Draxum said. "Partner?" "Yes, you'll be working with the Foot recruit," he said, pointing towards the door. At the door, he spots the female from before. Ah, there they are now, Draxum said cheerfully. Her. This was awful. It felt kinda weird to be, well, human. I feel like something was missing. And the whole phantom shell was not a fun experience, Michael thought to himself. He has been following around the foot recruit in absolute silence. It has been like this since they were given a list of places to search for the missing pieces of armor. It was practically death. He wasn't used to not talking. Sure, he was quiet with Draxum, but even now and then they would have a conversation. This was just uncomfortable. Eventually, Michael had enough. Do you ever say anything? He spoke out, looking at the female. They only faced forward, clearly ignoring him. You know, I remember the other recruits saying you were a talker. Right now I see more of a sleepy kitten, he said with a smirk. What? She said, halting to see the other. She had an angry look to herself. Well, at least there's a reaction, Michael thought. Hey, I'm just trying to make conversation, he said defensively. Well, stop. We are here for a mission, period, she said, proceeding to board the ferry. Okay, perhaps we got on the wrong foot. Michael started chasing after her. Let's start over. My name is Michelangelo. What's yours? He said, sticking out his hand for her to shake. She stares at his hand and then back at him, before shoving it off. Michelangelo, I thought your name was For, she said, leaning in close to him, with a suspicious look in her eyes. Michael backed up a bit from the closeness. It is, but I gave myself another name since I didn't like being called a number, Michael said, looking down as he fidgeted with his fingers. His head shoots up with a stern look. And you're not telling Baron Draxum about it, he said, pointing a finger at her. She sighs. I suppose I'll keep it to myself, she said. After all, it has no use in furthering our missions, she said, leaning on a rail. Good, Michael said, staring out to the sea. But the silence started taking over again. Okay, now this is usually the part where you tell me your name, Michael said, looking at her. I don't have one, she said, going back to the silence. Well, that's a lie. Every human has a name. I renounced mine. You expect me to believe that everyone calls you Foot Recruit? Oh God, they do, he said, shocked. Well, then tell me the name you renounced, he said. No. Please? No. Fine. I'll just guess, Michael said proudly. Is it Maria? What? The recruit said, now looking at him. Okay, so then Samantha. What? No, Jennifer. You're really bad at this, Laura. Please stop, Tiff. I tease Casey, she said very loudly. Really? Are you sure it's not Tiffany? 'Cause you seem like a Tiffany. I hate you. Michael smiled and started giggling at her response. Well, it's nice to meet you, Casey, he said, putting his hand out for her to shake. She stares at it for a bit before reluctantly shaking it. I can't say the same, Michelangelo. The ferry finally came to a stop as many people got off. A few got on, but that didn't matter. What mattered was there wouldn't be many people around watching them. They both put on their masks and started walking to the parking lot located at the bottom of the ferry. They both enter and start looking for what they had come for. You check this side, I'll check the other, Casey said, walking to her respective side. Remember, we're looking for a white pickup truck, she shouted before rushing off to search. Michael started his search for the missing armor piece that they had to cross off their list. After running into about 5 white trucks, Michael had enough and resorted to using his mystic energy. He de-transforms back to his turtle state to feel more relaxed. He takes a deep breath before closing his eyes, looking for the mystic energy signal. He could feel his sense rise as he looked for it, until he found one. Except it didn't feel like how it did back at the Foot's lair. This one felt slightly weaker, not to mention there were 3 of them. I thought Cassie said the piece was still intact while they were moving it to the facility, Michael thought to himself. Perhaps some idiot human broke it. No matter, I'll just unite the pieces, and then rub it in Casey's face for finding it first. That should bring a more friendly demeanor. As he approached the area, he froze in his tracks. He took notice of the very familiar tank in front of him. That didn't go so well. But on the upside, we got to ride the ferry to another DVD store, a familiar snarky voice said. Michael looks past the tank, seeing the 3 large turtles he's been running into. So we didn't see all the warnings, demolition signs. No biggie, the red one said. No biggie indeed, brother. See, back in ancient times, easily 2002, there were boxes or kiosks where you could rent or return DVDs. And I just plotted everyone in New York to the tank's GPS. You're welcome. So as soon as we dock, we can go to the nearest kiosk, the purple one said proudly. Great work, Donnie. Now while we wait to dock, Raph can think of a plan to get our missing brother back, Red said, rubbing his chin. The blue one groaned. Look, Raph, I'm all for finding him, but it's been a few days now with no sign. Maybe you could ease up a bit, Blue said. As much as I hate saying this, Leo is right. We should focus on what's important. Dad's hugs, Donnie said, sounding a bit cheerful at the end of his sentence. Raph knows it's just. Raph wants to be prepared for any scenario, Raph said. Michael wanted to back up, but apparently, He forgot the most basic role of a ninja. Silence. Crack. Michael looked back, seeing he had kicked a rock back. Shoot, was that a human? Leo said after hearing the noise. Stay here, Raph will investigate, Raph said, approaching Michael's general area. Michael panics seeing Raph approach. He attempts to slip away until he bumped into something hard. He rebounds back, rubbing his snout as he looks at who he ran into. How did you even get there so fast? Michael said, putting back on his mask. 4 guys, he Raph's tried to yell, only to get sucker punched in the gut. Michael tries to make a run for it, hoping to find Casey, so she could portal them out of there. But instead, he is met with another portal that spawns in front of him. He could stop the momentum from his run, so fell into the portal, landing hard on the tank and falling on the floor. Oh my bad, didn't mean to portal you there, Leo said, cringing at the fall. Looking up, he sees all 3 turtles surrounding him. Please calm down, we just want to talk, Raph said calmly, slowly approaching him. Right, I'm not saying anything, Michael said, backing up, ready to pull out his fundo, realizing it was gone. You looking for this? Leo said, holding up his weapon. You're not getting this back until we talk about, well, this whole situation. Michael let out a small growl before leaping at Leo, but was tugged back by something latching onto his shell. What the? He looks around, seeing he is being lifted off the ground by 2 metallic arms. Impressed, I designed it myself. You won't be able to get out of that anytime soon, Donnie said snarkily. Let go of me. For people who want to talk, you sure seem hostile, Michael said, struggling against the battle shell. We're really sorry, it's just we don't want to fight, and this is the only way we thought of to get you to listen, Raph said, trying to reassure the small turtle. Well, it's not very calming, Michael said, still struggling. Sorry, but please can we talk, Raph said pleadingly. Michael stared at him, seeing the genuine care and worry in Raph's eye. Perhaps he should give them a chance to speak. No, he can't. No, now let me go, he said bitterly. Raph sighed. Well, that got us nowhere, Leo said. What now, he questioned. Raph thought about it before sighing. Call Pops and tell him we have him. Perhaps Dad can get him to talk. Michael struggled more with those words. These guys are insane, he thought as he frantically moved. Already, O'Donnell tried to say, but a shuriken landed right in his wrist tablet, breaking it. My baby, he yelled frantically, sounding upset. Michael was suddenly released from the battle shell, seeing behind the turtles was Casey. Took you long enough, Michael said, getting up. You're lucky I even came back for you, Casey shouted back. Oh great, he's working with the Foot Clan now, Leo said. Is there a crime boss that isn't hell-bent on killing us, that you don't work for? Leo said, running to Michael. Michael reacted quickly, talking Leo to the ground and grabbing his fundo. Raph tries to stop him, but Machiel avoids his attempts to practically bear hug him, eventually joining Casey. The 2 of them took off running as the 3 turtles chased after them. Casey, I think a portal would be nice right now, Mikey said. I have a better idea, Casey said. We'll make it quick, we're running out of floor, Michael said, noticing they are approaching the end of the ship. On the count of 3 we jump. Ready, she said. Wait, what? 1. Wait, Casey, I caught 2. Casey, wait, 3, she shouted, taking hold of Mikey's wrist, forcing him to follow her as she jumped off the ferry into the ocean. I can't swim, Michael shouted midair, but it was too late as he entered the waters. It was completely cold when he went under. He struggled to climb to the surface of the water, but his frantic wailing of arms was getting him nowhere. Eventually, he slipped into unconsciousness after wasting so much energy. You got the plan right? Mikey said, sternly looking at Mondo. Yes, I will purposefully lose the next round so I don't have to compete in the competition, Mondo said, very relaxed. Now come on, Mikey, loosen up, we got this, Big Mama won't suspect a thing, he said, giving him a wink. Besides, she allowed you to rest and get your voice back. Perhaps she won't even punish you anymore, Mondo continued, trying to reassure their friend. Okay, if you say so, Mikey said in a weak voice. Oh, come on, Mikester. Turn your frown upside down, Mondo said, making the silliest face he could. Mikey practically burst out laughing at Mondo's face. See now, that's the Mikey I know, Mondo said, resting his hands on his shoulders. They both decide to walk around the giant arena, avoiding watching the fights, hanging as much as possible. Eventually, they ran into a big crowd surrounding a screen that showed Big Mama. What's going on over there? Michael said. He's been around Big Mama enough to know she actively avoids announcements, only announcing things for something big. Come on, let's check it out, Mondo said as they dragged Mikey over to the crowd. Why hello, my lovely follower, Big Mama announced from the screen. It is with great honor that I congratulate our current winners, who will now be entering the semifinals. The crowd rode in the lobby as clips of the winners appeared on the screen. And once again I apologize for Citrine's surprising brutal fight, she said. Mikey put up his hood as the crowd was cheering at his fight. He could practically feel Mondo's concerned look. But after many positive reactions, "I believe this allows a change of rules," she said with a wide grin spreading across her face. Mikey's eyes blew wide at the words. "From now on all fights are to the death." The crowd roared at the news as both Mikey and Mondo's stomachs dropped. But before they had any time to react to the news, "And with that, I pronounce our new bracket," she said as the screen shows the new list. The crowd at this point burst, not really caring for who was against who as long as the blood was drawn they would follow. Both Mondo and Michael take a look. You could feel the tension rise when they saw who they were up against. Mikey, his breath hitched when he read, "Citrine vs. Mondo Gecko." Michael violently coughed out water, jolting him back to consciousness. In that jolt, he feels himself slowly being sat up, proctoring him to gently open his eyes. His vision was a bit blurry, but he could make out the person helping him. "Cassie, yes, that's me," she said. Michael coughed again, getting out the last remaining water in his lungs. "Where are we?" he questioned, realizing they were no longer on the ferry on a beach. "I don't actually know, I just swam us to the nearest shore," she said, looking around. "Here," she said, tossing him his cloaking pin. "You might need it." Michael sighed. He kinda hated being human. With that, he transformed back into his human disguise. They both got up and started looking for an exit. "What happened to the turtles?" Cassie chuckled. "Well, they cowered away seeing us bravely jump off the ferry," she said proudly. "They didn't even try to swim after us. Of course not. The purple one couldn't swim or fly. Now that abolished his weaponry," she said, a bit unhinged. "Speaking of which," she said, turning to look at Michael, "what kind of turtle can't swim?" she questioned. "Michelle sighed. "I'm a box turtle, so I never learned how to swim," he said, trying to walk away from the conversation. "But aren't turtles just genetically wired to know how to swim?" she said, chasing after him. "Not my species of turtle, and you never learned to swim." "No, not many places to swim in the hidden city," he said, heading toward the exit of the beach area. "I see some almighty warriors," she said teasingly. "What?" he said, turning to her with an offended look on his face. "Oh please, I've taken down a whole mafia, and you think I'm weak 'cause I can't swim? Well, clearly it has taken the fact you almost drowned and made me have to carry you to shore," she said as they left the beach, walking towards the foot slayer. "Whatever did you even get the mystic medal?" "Of course, Mikey. Unlike you, I completed mission," she said. "Good, and don't call me that," he said, stuffing his hands into his pockets. "Call you what, Mikey?" she asked, confused. "What's wrong with that?" "I just don't like it." "Well, you don't expect me to call you Michelangelo," she said. "Well, you can't call me that." "All right then, Miguel. Let's return this piece of the armor to the foot," she said, inspecting the medal. "What does the armor even do?" he questioned, hoping to get a response. "That information is classified," she said, stuffing the medal into the saddle she was carrying. "Common, we're buddies now, remember," he said, giving her a side hug. In the process, she pushes his arms to the side. "Like I said before, the information is classified," she said as she stood at the entrance of the foot shack. "But no worries, Miguel, you will soon see the true power of the foot," she said as she entered the building. Michael's face stopped to annoyance. Well, the friendly route was not the best way to get information, he thought. TP himself. He looks at the store, face hardening, watching the employees inside. "They're up to something, I know it. I just need to find out what." Notes: go check out my Tumblr at errorcode400.